Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ, and happy 30th Sunday in Ordinary Time. So, in our gospel today, Jesus is asked a very important question. He says, which commandment in the law is the greatest? And this is how Jesus responds. He says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So, what I love about Jesus' response, and I'm going to kind of focus on this today, is that it's an ordered response. He says, first, then second. In this case, love God first, and then love neighbor second. Now, before you say, well, Jesus doesn't have enough love for humanity, or he's putting a neighbor in second place, or something like that. No, the reason why Jesus speaks in this way is because he's trying to teach us that one flows from the other. So that means authentic love of neighbor is going to flow from a deep and abiding love for God. The order matters. Love of God gives life to our love of neighbor. If we don't get the order right, then it's just not going to work out quite like we perhaps imagine. So Jesus speaks about this elsewhere in the Gospels. You remember that story about building a house, and someone goes to build a house, but they don't have enough supplies to actually finish the house. And Jesus is basically saying, this is ridiculous. If you're going to build a house, you got to make sure you have enough materials before you start building the house. Otherwise, you're going to get halfway through and you don't have enough materials, and it's just going to kind of fall by the wayside. It's going to kind of fizzle out. It's just not going to happen. You got to get the order right. One flows from the other. He also talks about the military commander going to battle. He once again points out it'd be ridiculous to go to battle if you don't have enough troops to actually win and engage in battle, right? Because you're going to get out there, you're going to start fighting, I don't have enough troops, and you're going to lose. It's not going to work out perhaps like you would imagine, right? One flows from the other. You got to get your troops in order to win and engage the battle. He speaks about the 10 virgins, and they go out to wait the bridegroom, and they've got their lamps lit. But once again, he says, if you're going to go out and wait for the bridegroom with their lamps lit, you got to make sure you have fuel for your lamps. If you don't have fuel, then your lamps are going to run out. You're not going to be ready when the bridegroom comes. Once again, order matters. One flows from the other. So once again, in this case, it's love of neighbor flows from love of God. You can try to do it the other way around, but it's just not going to work out the way you imagine. No, first love God, and you're going to see, you're going to have beautiful and abiding, deeper, committed love of neighbor. Now, I think about this in your own life. You've probably seen it work out this way. I see it as a priest. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon for someone to come to the parish, on fire, ready to serve. Tell me what to do, Father. I'm available. I'm here. I'm ready and willing. Ministry, service, apostolate, whatever it might be. So they're there, ready to go for about a year, maybe 2 years. But then all of a sudden, they kind of disappear. They don't show up quite as much as they used to. They kind of fizzle out. And some people might say, well, that's because it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't God's will. Or others might say, well, some personality thing, a little political, just didn't work out. But before we go down that road, which I suppose is possible, I usually find the real reason why it doesn't work out is because the order was wrong. That out of the goodness of their hearts, and thank God, and it's so good that they're there, they want to serve, and they start to help out, but there's not always the same care and concern put into one's personal relationship with the Lord. And so because there's not that same dedication to building a relationship with God, eventually their desire to serve, it just kind of fizzles out. There's no fuel, there's no troops, there's no supplies, right, to build the house. Okay, so you see what I'm saying. Order matters, right? One flows from the other. If we really want to love those around us, then we have to first really love and dedicate and commit ourselves to God. So you might ask, okay, well, how do we do that, Father Matt? All right, well, I'm going to give you one suggestion, one tried and true way, which is a total game changer. It is called mental prayer or meditation. You can read about it in the 4th part of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. You could Google mental prayer or Catholic meditation, and you're going to find a lot of good information about it. But the whole idea is that we need to set aside time for prayer. We need to set aside time for conversation with God. So this isn't a time just to read off prayers that maybe you have in a prayer book or prayers you memorized when you were a child. That's a great type of prayer. It's called vocal prayer. This is a different kind where you're having a conversation with the Lord, about your life, about what's really going on, your joys, your sorrows, your great successes, your failures, like whatever. Just speak to him. And so you speak, and then you quiet and you listen for the voice of the Lord speaking in your heart. You set aside this time every single day. And what you're going to find is that a relationship will form between you and the Lord. Just like when you set aside time for your friends and you have conversations and spend time together, your friendship deepens. Well, it's the same thing with the Lord. When we start to set aside time, we're going to see this relationship blossom. And this is what's going to fuel and give life to your friendships and your love of neighbor. Okay? So once again, set aside time. I suggest 10 minutes, start there. And then with time, you could expand to maybe a half hour. But the point is, dedicated time for the Lord. Pull out the Gospels, read a story about the life of Jesus. It's, Lord, what are you trying to tell me through this story? And then you listen and this is what I think. It's a dialogue, conversation with God. So, brothers and sisters, if you want to love your neighbor better, invest in the Lord. Invest in your relationship with the Lord. And I suggest you start with mental prayer or meditation. So let's go to Mother Mary and ask her to help us. Whether it's, I want to love my spouse better. I want to love my kids better. I want to be just a better man or woman of service in the workplace, amongst my friends at my church. I want to be more, alive, invested. If you want that, focus on the Lord. Dedicate more time to the Lord, especially in prayer. So, Mother Mary, please help us to do that, to focus on your Son, Jesus, so that we can truly love those around us.